What happens when love becomes sacrifice? When a mother's most precious possession becomes less valuable than her child's heartbeat? This is the moment Jimmy Fallon stopped being a television host and became something more profound, something that would change everyone in Studio 6B forever. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than a fun segment about valuable possessions. But when 34-year-old Sarah Williams looked down at her empty ring finger and whispered 7 words that shattered every heart in that studio, the laughter died, the cameras kept rolling, but this wasn't television anymore. This was the raw, unfiltered truth about what mothers will do when their children's lives hang in the balance. It was a Thursday night taping at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, and The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon was in full swing. The energy was infectious, the audience was engaged, and Jimmy was doing what he did best, making people feel like they were part of something special. The show's producers had planned a segment called America's Most Valuable, where audience members would share the most precious things they owned and the stories behind them. It was designed to be heartwarming, maybe a little sentimental, perfect for the kind of feel-good content that made people share clips on social media. Sarah Williams sat in the fourth row with her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, both wearing matching blue dresses that Sarah had sewn herself. Sarah worked as a nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital, pulling double shifts whenever possible to make ends meet. Emma was small for her age, with curious green eyes and a smile that could light up any room, though lately she tired easily, and her lips sometimes carried a bluish tint that worried her mother more than she let on. They'd received these tickets through the hospital's Employee Appreciation Program, and for Sarah, it represented something precious. A normal evening with her daughter away from hospitals and medical appointments, and the constant worry that had consumed their lives for the past 18 months. Emma loved Jimmy Fallon, especially his silly games and impressions, and seeing her laugh without the shadow of illness hanging over them was worth more to Sarah than anything money could buy. During the pre-show audience interaction, Sarah had caught the attention of Jimmy's production team. There was something about her, the way she held her daughter close, the quiet strength in her posture, the gentle way she whispered encouragement to Emma when the studio noise became overwhelming. When they asked if she'd be interested in participating in the valuable possessions segment, Sarah hesitated. She didn't really own anything valuable anymore, but Emma's excited face made the decision for her. Jimmy was working the crowd with his usual charm, moving through the audience with a wireless microphone, making people laugh and feel comfortable. He'd already talked to a man who collected vintage baseball cards and a woman whose grandmother's pearl necklace had survived the Holocaust. The stories were touching, meaningful, exactly what the segment was designed to showcase. When Jimmy reached Sarah's row, he immediately noticed Emma, who was watching him with wide-eyed fascination. "And who do we have here?" Jimmy asked, crouching down to Emma's level with that genuine warmth that made him so beloved. "I'm Emma, and this is my mom," Emma replied, her voice soft but clear. "She's a nurse, and she saves people." Jimmy smiled at Sarah. "A nurse? That's amazing. What's your name?" "Sarah Williams," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervousness she felt at being on camera. "Sarah, Emma tells me you're a nurse. That's one of the most important jobs in the world. Thank you for what you do." The audience applauded appreciatively. Jimmy had a way of making everyone feel seen, valued. Now, we're talking about valuable possessions tonight. What's the most valuable thing you own? The question hung in the air for a moment. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her ring finger, now bare, and something flickered across her face, a micro expression of pain so quick that most people would have missed it. But Jimmy had been doing this long enough to notice when someone's smile didn't quite reach their eyes. "I don't own anything valuable anymore," Sarah said quietly, forcing a smile that was meant to deflect, to move the conversation along. But Jimmy didn't move along. Something in her tone, something in the way her hand had touched her empty ring finger, made him pause. The cameras stayed focused on them, the audience waited, and in that moment, Jimmy made a choice that would define the next hour of television. "What do you mean by that?" he asked gently, settling into the seat next to Sarah rather than standing over her. Sarah glanced down at Emma, who was listening intently, then back at Jimmy. She hadn't planned to talk about this. She'd never talked about it publicly, but there was something in Jimmy's eyes, something that made her feel safe, that made her feel like her story mattered. "I used to have my wedding ring," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't expensive, but it was everything to me. My husband gave it to me when Emma was born. He died in Afghanistan when she was 2, and that ring was all I had left of him." The studio had grown quieter. Jimmy's expression had changed completely, his entertainer's mask slipping away to reveal something more genuine, more human. "Used to have?" Jimmy prompted softly. Sarah's composure began to crack. "Emma has a heart condition. She needs surgery, and our insurance, it doesn't cover everything. The co-pays, the medications, the time I have to take off work." Her voice broke slightly. "I sold my wedding ring 6 months ago to help pay for her treatment." The silence in Studio 6B was absolute. 300 people held their breath as they watched a mother's love laid bare, as they witnessed the kind of sacrifice that exists quietly in millions of homes across America, unseen and unacknowledged. Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that held too much understanding for an 8-year-old. "Mom, you told me Daddy would want you to do that." Sarah nodded, tears now flowing freely. "He would have. Daddy loved you so much, Emma. And this ring." She held up her empty hand. "But she's worth more than any ring. She's worth everything." Jimmy felt something break open in his chest. His own daughter's face flashed through his mind, and he understood with crystal clarity that he was sitting next to someone who embodied the purest form of love he'd ever encountered. This wasn't just a sad story. This was heroism in its most fundamental form. Without thinking, without consulting producers, without following any protocol, Jimmy took Sarah's hand in both of his. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the most valuable thing in this studio tonight. You and Emma, both." The audience began to applaud, but Jimmy held up his hand. He wasn't finished. "Can you tell me about the surgery Emma needs?" Sarah wiped her eyes with the tissue someone from the crew had handed her. "She has a condition called tetralogy of Fallot. It's a heart defect she was born with. She's had 2 surgeries already, but she needs one more, a bigger one, to fix everything permanently." "And how much does that cost?" "The surgery itself is covered, but there's so much more. The recovery time means I can't work for weeks. The medications, the follow-up appointments, the specialized care." Sarah's voice was steady now, matter of fact, the way medical professionals talk about difficult realities. "We're managing, but it's tight, really tight." Jimmy looked at Emma, who was listening to her mother, with the kind of mature attention that children develop when they've spent too much time in hospitals. "Emma, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile she'd shown all evening. "A nurse, just like Mom. I want to help kids who are sick like me." That's when Jimmy's composure completely shattered. He stood up abruptly, walked to the edge of the stage, and called out to his production team, "Marcus, get over here. Now!" Marcus, Jimmy's producer, jogged over with a concerned expression. Jimmy whispered something urgent to him, and Marcus's eyes widened. He nodded quickly and rushed off stage. Jimmy returned to Sarah and Emma, but instead of sitting back down, he knelt in front of them. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If money wasn't an issue, if you could focus entirely on taking care of Emma without worrying about bills or work, what would that mean for her recovery?" Sarah looked confused. "I don't understand. Just answer the question. What would it mean?" "It would mean everything," Sarah said without hesitation. "I could be with her every day during recovery. I could make sure she gets the best care, follow every protocol perfectly. I could focus entirely on helping her heal instead of worrying about how we're going to pay rent next month." Jimmy nodded. "And what about after? What kind of life do you want to give Emma?" "A normal one," Sarah whispered. "I want her to play soccer if she wants to. I want her to go to college. I want her to never have to worry about whether we can afford her medications. I want her to chase her dreams, not just survive." Jimmy felt tears streaming down his face, and he didn't care who saw them. Sarah, I want you to know something. What you did, selling your wedding ring for Emma's health, that's not just sacrifice, that's love in its purest form. And Emma, watching your mom take care of you like this, you're learning what real strength looks like. He stood up and addressed the entire studio. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been in television for 20 years. I've met celebrities, politicians, people who are famous for having money, for being powerful, but I have never, ever met anyone as valuable as Sarah Williams. The audience erupted in applause, but Jimmy wasn't finished. Sarah sold her wedding ring, the last physical connection she had to her husband who died serving our country, to help pay for her daughter's heart surgery. She works double shifts as a nurse, saving other people's lives during the day and worrying about her own daughter's life at night. And through all of this, she's raising a little girl who wants to grow up to help other sick children. Jimmy's voice was getting stronger, more passionate. You want to know what's valuable? Sarah is valuable. Emma is valuable. The love between them is the most precious thing I've ever witnessed. He turned back to Sarah. I asked my producer to make some calls during our conversation. Sarah, do you remember the exact amount the surgery and recovery will cost? Sarah nodded, confused. Around $45,000, but we have most of it figured out. We just need to... No, Jimmy interrupted gently. You don't. Marcus reappeared at Jimmy's side, carrying a large envelope and wearing a smile that lit up his entire face. Sarah, Jimmy continued, there are some people watching tonight who have been moved by your story. In the past 20 minutes, while we've been talking, my team has been on the phone with the viewers who are live streaming this show. He took the envelope from Marcus. The Tonight Show audience, people watching from home, they've donated money through our website, real money from real people who understand what you're going through. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. What are you saying? Jimmy opened the envelope and pulled out a check. When he turned it around for Sarah to see, she gasped audibly. This check is for $68,000, Sarah, enough to cover Emma's surgery, the recovery time, and everything else you need, from complete strangers who believe in the love you have for your daughter. Sarah stared at the check in disbelief. Emma looked between her mother and Jimmy, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing that it was important. I can't accept this, Sarah whispered. Yes, you can, Jimmy said firmly, and you will, because Emma deserves the best possible care, and you deserve to focus on being her mother instead of worrying about money. But Jimmy wasn't done. There's something else, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Sarah, you sold your wedding ring because you had to choose between your past and Emma's future. But what if you didn't have to choose? He pulled out a small velvet box. I can't replace your husband. I can't bring him back, but I can make sure you have something to remind you that his love is still with you, still protecting your family. He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a small diamond. This isn't a replacement for what you lost. This is a symbol that Emma has an entire community of people who love her now, who want to see her healthy and happy. Every time you look at this ring, I want you to remember that you're not alone anymore. Sarah was sobbing now, tears of relief and disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. The audience was on their feet, crying and applauding, witnessing something that transcended entertainment. Jimmy slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? Sarah asked through her tears. Jimmy smiled. I didn't, but sometimes things just work out the way they're supposed to. Emma, who had been quietly watching this entire exchange, finally spoke up. Mom, does this mean I can have my surgery? Sarah knelt down and pulled her daughter into the tightest hug imaginable. Yes, baby, you can have your surgery, and Mommy's going to be right there with you every step of the way. Emma looked at Jimmy with those wise green eyes. Thank you for taking care of my mom. She takes care of everyone else, but sometimes she forgets to take care of herself. Jimmy knelt down to Emma's level one more time. Emma, I want you to promise me something. When you become a nurse like your mom, I want you to remember this feeling. I want you to remember that sometimes the most important medicine isn't something you give to patients. It's hope. It's love. It's letting people know they're not alone. Emma nodded solemnly. I promise. Jimmy stood up and addressed the camera directly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what America looks like at its best. When we see someone who needs help, we help. When we see a mother sacrificing everything for her child, we don't just admire her strength, we support it. Sarah Williams is a hero, and Emma is going to grow up to be a hero too. He turned back to Sarah one final time. You never have to worry about Emma's medical bills again. Ever. The Tonight Show, our sponsors, and the incredible people watching tonight, we've got you covered. Always. As the cameras finally stopped rolling and the audience began to file out, something unprecedented happened. People didn't just leave, they came down to the stage to meet Sarah and Emma, to hug them, to share their own stories of struggle and survival. Other parents talked about their own children's medical challenges. Other single mothers shared their fears and hopes. Sarah found herself at the center of an impromptu support group surrounded by strangers who had become family in the span of an hour. One woman, Carol, approached with tears in her eyes. My son had the same surgery Emma needs, she said. He's 25 now, married, healthy. Emma's going to be fine. More than fine, she's going to be extraordinary. An elderly man named Robert pressed a hand-carved wooden heart into Emma's palm. My grandfather made this for me when I was your age, he said. It's supposed to bring good luck to sick hearts. I think it worked. I'm 87 years old. I want you to have it now. Jimmy watched all of this from the side of the stage, still processing what had just happened. His producer, Marcus, came up beside him. Jimmy, we've never had a response like this. The website crashed from all the donations. The phone lines are jammed with people wanting to help Sarah and Emma. This is bigger than anything we've ever done. Jimmy nodded, but he wasn't thinking about ratings or viral videos or any of the usual metrics of television success. Marcus, he said quietly, call the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country. I want Emma to have the absolute best care available. Money is no object. Already done, Marcus smiled. Dr. Patricia Chen at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. She's the top specialist in tetralogy of fallout repairs. She's already agreed to take Emma's case personally. 3 months later, Emma's surgery was a complete success. Dr. Chen later said it was one of the most textbook-perfect repairs she'd ever performed. Emma's recovery was swift and smooth, aided by the fact that Sarah could be with her daughter every single day, holding her hand, reading her stories, never having to leave her side to worry about work or bills. Jimmy visited Emma in the hospital twice during her recovery, bringing books and games and his infectious energy. But more importantly, he brought updates from all the people who had been following Emma's story, all the viewers who had become invested in her journey. Emma, he told her during one visit, you've got about 10,000 new aunts and uncles across America. They all want to know how you're doing. Emma, looking healthier and pinker than she had in years, smiled that brilliant smile that had captured hearts across the nation. Tell them I'm going to be the best nurse ever, she said, and that I'm going to take care of kids just like they took care of me. Sarah, wearing her new ring and looking more relaxed than she had in years, squeezed Jimmy's hand. You changed our lives, she said simply. No, Jimmy replied. You changed ours. You reminded all of us what's really valuable. The episode, when it aired, became the most watched Tonight Show segment in the program's history. But more than that, it sparked a national conversation about healthcare costs, about the sacrifices parents make for their children, about the power of community to support families in crisis. Sarah returned to work part-time after Emma's recovery, but she also became a spokesperson for families dealing with pediatric medical crises. She spoke at hospitals, at conferences, to other parents facing impossible choices, and she never took off the ring Jimmy had given her. Not because it was expensive or beautiful, but because it reminded her of the night when strangers became family, when television became ministry, when love proved it was the most valuable currency of all. Emma thrived after her surgery. She joined the soccer team, made honor roll, and never stopped talking about becoming a nurse. On her 9th birthday, she received a card from Jimmy with a simple message: to the future nurse who's going to change the world, keep making us proud. 2 years later, when Emma was invited back to The Tonight Show for a Where Are They Now segment, she walked onto that stage with confidence and joy, her heart strong and healthy, her future bright and unlimited. Jimmy hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "Your mom was right. You really are worth more than any ring." Emma whispered back, "And you were right too." The most important medicine is hope. Sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be given freely, received gratefully, and shared generously. In a studio in New York City, a mother's love met a community's compassion, and together they proved that the most precious possessions are the ones we hold in our hearts. Sarah Williams taught America that true wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in what you're willing to sacrifice for the people you love. And in return, America taught Sarah that she was never alone, that her strength was seen and valued, that her daughter's life mattered to thousands of people she'd never meet. That's not just television. That's hope in action. That's love multiplied. That's the beautiful truth that when we take care of each other, we all become more valuable than any earthly possession could ever make us.